Good morning, folks. As of Sunday, we are entering into the beginning of Holy Week, which, of course, is sort of the high point of the church's year, and it's the time in which Jesus ultimately surrendered his life for the sake of humanity. Now, the first event that is part of that, of course, is the and it's sort of the Palm Sunday event, is the triumphant entry of Jesus into Jerusalem, where on a donkey and threw palms on the roadway before him, and also put cloaks under him on his donkey, and people were shouting and cheering, and they kept proclaiming, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest." So it's a triumphal entry, if you will, of Jesus into Jerusalem, and one would, with that kind of entry, one would expect that it would have remained like that, but you know as well as I do that it didn't. So with the yard to Holy Week, just of course the institution of the Eucharist, we find the institution of the Eucharist, and then almost immediately after the institution of the Eucharist, we find Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane with some of his disciples, and while he is there, he finds that his disciples falls asleep while he has what should I say? He sort of foresees all that's going to happen to him later in the week, but in seeing it or foreseeing it, his response is to his Father is that your will, let your will, not my will, be done. And then you have the exact opposite of the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. That is where Jesus is. The people. Well, actually, it's first of all after he's denied, Jesus is brought before the Sanhedrin. He's brought before Pilate. He's brought before Herod, and one after another, one passes him on to the other, and then Pilate, really, who is the governor. Pilate knows that he's not guilty, and he says as much, that Jesus is not guilty. But when he says that, then the people, amazingly, it's the exact opposite of what happened on Palm Sunday. The people yelled, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" So the people went from sort of one extreme to the other, and consequently, Pilate, being sort of a weak man, felt that he had to give in to the will of the people, and so Pilate is the one who says, let him die. And of course that in turn led to his crucifixion, and we know that he was abandoned by Peter and the other disciples, and we know that on his way to Calvary, that Simon of Cyrene was the one who was forced into to help him, and sort of ensured that he was able to stay alive until the time for his actual crucifixion. So there's sort of two ways of looking at the events of Holy Week. One is to see it in terms of what happened to Jesus, and as I say, I've just sort of run through it rather quickly. The other, of course, is to look at it from how Jesus responded to it, and in relationship to how Jesus responded to it, there's a little statement from St. Paul's letter to the Philippians, which is actually read. It's the second reading in Palm Sunday, and it's also the second reading on Good Friday. It's where Paul in chapter 2 of Philippians, verse 5, he says the following. He says, though he was in the form of God, he did not deem equality with God something to be grasped. Rather, he emptied himself and took the form of a slave. And Paul goes on to say that he was obedient to the will of his Father right up until the moment of his death, and that all of this was sort of he humbled himself completely and was obedient up until the moment of his death. And it was because of that surrender Basically, what it's saying is, what in that Philippians reading is saying is that Jesus surrendered himself completely. That, as he said in the Garden of Gethsemane, not my will, but your will be done. So in essence, in and through his death on the cross, he was surrendering himself up to the will of his Father. And Paul says at the very beginning of chapter 2, verse 5, just the statement just before the beginning of chapter 5, it says, or verse 5 says, your attitude must be that of Christ. So in other words, what Christ did in Holy Week, or what he accomplished in Holy Week, what happened to him on Holy Week, we need to, as Christians, as followers of Christ, as baptized followers of Christ, we need to attempt to do the same thing in our lives. So Holy Week for us should be an opportunity to, in a sense, relive the passion of Jesus Christ, and in a sense, in reliving it, actually make a commitment that we try and be obedient to his will on all occasions. So that's it in a nutshell. Other than when we think of the Passion of Christ, we think of something that we think of events that happened 2,000 years ago, which of course is true. But the Passion of Christ is not just about what happened in the past. It's in some ways it's what we call a supratemporal event. It's an event that didn't just happen in the past. It happens all the time, and especially today when we see what's happening in Ukraine, and how the people are being, their country has been destroyed, and how the people are being just brutalized and put to death. We know that they also, that's the passion of Christ been lived out in today's society. So it's a great message, I think, and it's a reminder to all of us, first of all, of how God really is telling us about God loved us so much that he surrendered his life on our behalf. And because of his love for us, we need to do our best to love him in return by fulfilling his will in our lives on a daily basis. Thank you.